Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name's Emma Robson, and I'm the co-director of Aspen Coaching, along with my husband, Glenn. We've been teaching movement for the best part of 20 years now, and our approach has constantly evolved as we've searched for what actually creates physical freedom in people's bodies. Here's what we've learned working with everyone from 20-year-olds who can't touch their toes to 70-year-olds learning how to do a handstand. Movement is for everyone, regardless of your age or your condition or where you think you're starting from. But here's the thing. Nobody teaches you how to actually take care of your body. And you may have had good intentions, but most fitness trends just are not comprehensive enough for real physical freedom. So it really breaks my heart when I hear people say like, oh, I've got a bad back, so I can't do that. Oh no, I broke my ankle, when I was 18, so I can't do that anymore. And their body's holding them back from living fully, from playing with their kids, from joining into activities, from going on adventurous holidays, or just moving through daily life without pain and worry. So Aspen Coaching is about giving people back this confidence, autonomy, and strength. We want people to experience the joy that comes from physical freedom. Over the years, we've identified 5 key movement qualities that create what we call coordinative harmony. When your body moves harmoniously, you don't create problems just by living your life. The way you sleep, the way you sit at your desk all day, or the way you go about your daily activities don't create the aches and pains that most people are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. So today we're focusing on one of these core qualities, which is mobile hips. And we're going to redefine what hip mobility actually means and give you practical tools you can use immediately. Now, we learn best by doing, not just by talking about it. So expect to move, reach out to us and ask questions if you have them. And those aha moments are the ones that can change everything. All right, so let's dive in. Now, this is going to be a little bit of me talking to you guys through the screen, a little bit of me screen sharing a presentation, and then moving together. The movement is optional, but I would highly recommend you participating because, as I said, it is in action that things change, and we retain far more of what we learn when we do versus when we just listen. Okay, think of it this way. If I was to cook a new meal for dinner and I read the recipe and I read it again, and then I go and start cooking and I have to go back and read it again because I forget the next step and I want to make sure I'm doing things in the right order. I have to go back and read my recipe multiple times to try to retain that information. And it's kind of like in one ear, out the other. But when once I've made this recipe 5, 10, 15 times, I don't need a recipe anymore because I know it. I know how to make the thing. So by actually doing, we learn far more than just reading. Now, this session was a live session we ran on Zoom, and we did have people from Malaysia, New Zealand, and all across Perth joining us live. And we had a really terrible time with our internet connection. So, I really appreciate everyone that stuck with us through the 90-minute live session, but this is a re-recording. This is not the live session. So some of, the participation from the audience and having people ask questions will not be in this recording. All right, so we're going to dive into the screen share in a moment, but we're going to start off with a tiny bit of trivia. Now, I want you to tell me if you know what the acetabulum is. Okay, so the word's up on the screen, acetabulum. Have you heard this word before? Now, as I said, this is not a live session. So in the live session, we had the chat box going and people commenting. Now, majority of people did not know this word, and that is okay. You don't need to know the anatomical names of our body to understand movement. Okay, but the reason I'm bringing up this is the word for our hip socket. Okay, and in a moment when we get into the screen share, I will show you what the pelvis and the hip socket looks like. But the word acetabulum has a Latin word meaning of vinegar vessel, a bowl, a vessel that you dip food into containing vinegar. And I want you to think of that literally, like curve-shaped vessel with something coming into it. Now that is what our hip socket is like. Okay, it's a socket with the femur that inserts in like a suction kind of motion and then moves in a circumductive, circular way. Okay, so to me, when you get things like the imagery, the symbolism, or the literal actual understanding of them. I think that's far more important than being able to name the 36 muscles that cross over the pelvis. Okay, I don't mind. I don't know all the muscles. I don't need to know all the muscles. I know movement really well. And this is going to be far more beneficial to you as practical tools that you can embody than, like I said, reading in textbooks and getting anatomically correct with things. Okay, we're going to be looking at laws of motion, laws of gravity, more than anatomy, but we will get a visual understanding of the anatomy because I think that plays a really big part in how we understand our movement. So one of the biggest dysfunctions we see is that people use the wrong joints for the wrong things. And I'm going to use this example because it's the common one and because we're all here to talk about the hips. But the lower back and the SIJ, which is like the back of the pelvis where the spine and the pelvis meet, are joints that crave stability. And the hip socket is a joint that craves mobility. But for most people, the hip socket doesn't move and we get way too much motion in the SIJ and the lumbar region. And this is also correlates with the high prevalence of disc-related lower back injuries. So we're going to look at like, why is this? And more importantly, what we can do to correct these movement behaviors. All right, so let's jump onto a screen share. All right, unlocking your movement potential. So that's what we've called today's workshop. Now, if there's one thing I want you to take out of today's session, I want it to be this. You are not broken. You don't need another physio appointment, GP appointment, but you do need to move. And you are the only person that can give your body what it needs. But we're going to show you how. So too often people have these good intentions and they go about their exercise, doing it 3 times a week, trying to get stronger, trying to increase range of motion, improve their core strength, only to find that their pains and problems follow them. And the thing is, there is a missing link, and it is you understanding your body and how it needs to work as a complex, comprehensive system. Now, that sounds complex, and I'm hoping today we take away that confusion and we can start to simplify some of the bigger conversations that we have about the body. Firstly, you cannot work on any one area, any one muscle or any one joint. We don't work like that. Secondly, you must steer the ship, and you can absolutely use the guidance of professionals like coaches like myself, therapists, physios, but they should be guiding you to ultimately understand yourself and have autonomy and confidence in your body. Alrighty, understanding how your hips affect performance. So let's first define performance. Now, you don't need to view yourself as an athlete to think about optimizing performance, because to us, performance is about performing at life. Whatever version of that life that is desirable to you, this is going to be relevant. You must work on full body collaboration, dynamic movement, and understand the effects of gravity. So please feel free as you go through this workshop to jot down some notes. If things don't make sense and you want clarity or you want to discuss them with us, send us an email. We would love to hear from you. We would love to hear how this workshop lands and what questions arise out of it. It's new for us to be presenting information in this way because previously it's all done in physical training, like one-to-one sessions. So to be presenting information in this format is new, and we are open to feedback. And we really want to know, like I said, the questions that end up popping up in your mind or that we don't get to the bottom of, because this is how we're going to improve, right? That feedback loop is important in all of our learning. So I kind of went off track there on defining what performance is, but, to some people, it's going to be about being a grandparent that can pick up their grandkids and play at the park and carry their groceries themselves and look after them, their home, and be autonomous in their care. For some people, it's going to be about being, Glenn, 40-year-old father of 2, wants to get out of bed with a spring in his step, go out for a run. As soon as there's a moment that the family and the work-life balance opens up, he wants to be able to go out for a run and not feel encumbered by his body. He wants to be able to pick up the kids, carry, run with them, and be like that energetic dad down the park, which he is. And still train and do all the things that he loves, you know. Everyone's version of performance is going to be different. But basically think of where you're at now and what is that like dream goal? If in 5 years' time your body could move in a certain way, what does that look like to you? Waking up pain-free, being able to like jump in the pool in the morning and like swim your kilometer without worrying about whether your shoulders or back is going to pull up poorly. Participating in exercise classes for the fun of it, for the joy, for the community, not because it's a chore or a punishment. Taking adventurous holidays where you mountain bike through Spain or hike mountains or go scuba diving and climb on boats. Like whatever it is that physical freedom and performance looks like to you, this is going to be relevant. Okay, moving right along onto our overview of today's workshop. Firstly, we're going to be talking about anatomy in theory and in action. And you'll see the hidden hip dysfunction that sabotages people's workouts. I know that's kind of a dramatic way to label it, but it is crazy how when you get the literal understanding of the hips and you try to put it into motion, it's so obvious what the hips function is, and yet it can be really hard to achieve. Then we're going to talk about gravity and the importance of gravity and why traditional stretching and strengthening often fails to create the lasting change that you might be seeking. We'll cover complexity and the fact that we are not machines. We are not cars. Okay, a car part breaks, something gets rusty, something's not working, you take out a piece and you put a new piece in, car is fine. Humans are not like that. Okay, we are complex systems, as I will keep saying, and we are a living, breathing organism. Now, I have a pot plant sitting on my front porch, a Monstera plant, and it doesn't look super healthy. Yeah, some of the leaves are broken, there's tears in it, there's these brown marks, and yeah, it doesn't look great. Now, if we acted like we were machines and like cars and like we can replace one part or fix one piece, we would be looking at putting a Band-Aid on that plant or covering up the cracks, trying to glue them back together, or even better, like take off the leaf and stick a new one on there. Obviously, that sounds stupid, and it's the same for the human body if we were to approach it that way. Now, we know that plant's leaves, the symptoms that we can view, are a product of its environment. The fact that it's in a pot, it's root bound. I probably water it once every 2 or 3 weeks if it's lucky. The kids are pretty physical with this plant, you know, walking along, grabbing the leaves, using them to use them like swords against each other, pulling on them. It doesn't get the perfect sunlight. There's all these reasons, right? And the leaves show the symptoms of the environment. So if I want that plant to thrive, I might need to water it more frequently, stop the kids playing with it, put it in a bigger pot, or better yet, plant it in the ground in an environment that actually suits it. And lastly, we're going to look at how to integrate this into your life. So daily practices that will transform stiffness into fluid, powerful movement. We'll be doing that through our physical component where you actually get to try to move in this way and see how simple some of the stuff is to do every day at home, no equipment, with that little bit of awareness. Alrighty, anatomy and theory. So let's just take a look at this little video that's going on the right. You've got the skeleton and all the connective tissue has been added. And then layer by layer, our muscles get layered on until we have a complete version animation of the human body. So you can see our glutes and the big hamstring muscles, the hip flexors and the quads running down the front, the adductors on the inside, all the muscles inside the pelvis, the abdominals, and then back to the connective tissue and the skeleton. Now, that acetabulum that we talked about is where the leg bone, the femur, inserts into the pelvis. And it is like that suction cup, that round ball into a circular socket. It's suctioned in and it pivots circumductively. This is where we get majority of our movement capabilities from for our hips and our lower limb, and it is responsible for passing forces between the upper and lower body. Now, the sacroiliac joint is at the back of the pelvis where the spine and ilium meet. Now, these two joints are both synovial joints, but they are not made equal. Okay, we've talked about the characteristics of the ball and socket joint. And when you look at it, you can see it's designed to move. And the next video will show you that even more. But now at the back here, if you look at where that bottom of the spine meets the side of the pelvis, they're kind of like two sheaths meeting together, like two plates of bone meeting together. Now there is a joint through there which does allow for movement, but it's obviously not free movement like we expect of our wrists and fingers and shoulders and hips. So I mentioned the SI joint because it's a joint that needs stability, and it is a joint that a lot of people have pain and problem in. And then if we fast track to what is the actual functional role of the pelvis, it is to support and hold the upper body and transmit forces into the lower body so that they don't get trapped in the hips. So when our pelvis is in the right place and the load is coming down through the spine, it goes through the through the SI joint, through the hip socket, into the legs and into our feet. Okay, this is the ideal way of moving, standing, and doing everything. And that's what we're going to be looking at today. So moving on to the next slide, just to point out the stability that we want through the sacroiliac joint, which is this as the round crest of the pelvis slides down and joins against the spine. This is the area we want stability from. And then that hip socket is where we want all of our mobility to come from. Now, this is a really nice visual of that hip socket and the motion that our hip should create. And notice all the connective tissue will slowly come along. Notice this beautiful circular motion. This motion is what we refer to when we talk about hip mobility. I'll just play that one more time. We are not talking about the splits and end range motion, you know, taking our hip as far as that hip socket is possibly able to move. We're talking about, can your femur actually pivot within the socket? Sounds simple, looks beautiful, looks smooth and fluid, yet it's actually really hard to do. So before we get moving, two more things I want to talk about. Three more things I want to talk about. So gravity. And this is we're going to talk about this in the view from above. Our body is constantly got the force of gravity coming down on it all the time. You get used to standing up because we've done it since we were 1 year old. But gravity is on us. And if you look at the aging population, you'll often see people get shorter and their spines curve and slink downward because they haven't learned how to stand up and push against gravity to hold their own structure. This is a really pivotal part of the way we approach training and caring for our bodies long term. So we'll be talking about the view from above, the skeletal organization. Where I hold my bones is going to affect my muscles more than what I engage or squeeze or focus on from a muscular activation point. I'm going to show you this again when we jump out of this screen share around the pelvis and some of the common things why people stretch and strengthen to realign or rebalance our posture, and why shifting our bones is going to be far more effective and, again, a long-term solution. And then the fact that we are a tensegrity structure. Now, tensegrity structure is coined from structural buildings, but it is rigid rods, as you can see in this picture, the wooden rods, which are self-supported through a collection of elastic bands, which are equivalent to our fascia and our muscles. Now, if I was just to stretch one of those bands or pull together or stretch apart one of the black bands, it would create a laxity in the structure and it wouldn't be self-supporting anymore. But if I pull on the wooden rods, the whole structure morphs and finds a way to support itself. And this is what we need to view when we view our movement in the human body, because no movement is isolated. Even though we see people trying to create isolated motions to get isolated mobility results, we need to move as one. Now, the last screen, so this is a little sample of how we will be moving in a moment. But I want you to just notice that anatomy in theory is great, and hopefully some of those things opened up your mind to how the body is. But now we want to put it into action. Now, they say that when we read something, we retain 10% of it. When we hear about it, we retain a bit more, 20%. When we see a demonstration, our retention increases again to 30%. Seeing and hearing a video, retention increases to 50%. Discussing with others, up to 70%. But when we do experience or teach it, this is when our retention is the highest at 90%. So I really want you to embody that in anything you try to learn in life. If you read something in a book, it is no use to you unless you go and put it into action. Yeah, so people pride themselves on reading multiple books per year, but any of those gold moments where you're like, wow, that's a great idea, you should close the book and work on implementing it for the next 30 days before you move on. Okay, this is going to be a better strategy at changing your habits, changing your life, and using the knowledge that you have and that you acquire to actually turn into tangible results and intentional actions in your life. So I'm going to stop the screen share there and come back. So we're going to go that anatomy in action now. And we're going to talk about the gravity, the tensegrity, the skeletal structure, the view from above, all of those things while we're moving. So the majority of what we see when it comes to hip mobility work is lying down on the floor, sitting on the floor, working on machines, kneeling, but it's supporting our body in some way and articulating the hip or strengthening it when our feet are not on the ground. This is the biggest dysfunction. Okay, this is what I'm talking about when we say like the biggest thing sabotaging your workout. If you work your hip mobility in passive ranges that are not including holding your body weight, it's irrelevant for functional movement. Okay, like we just talked about, pelvis is about supporting the upper body. If I chop myself off at the waist and put the top half of me on a scale, how much do I weigh? Maybe 35 kilos. You know, I'm a 70 kilo person, so 35 kilos maybe my top half weighs. That's a lot of weight, right? Picture what it feels like in dumbbell or kettlebell or plates to pick up 35 kilos. That weight is pressing down on your pelvis all the time. Your legs are responsible for carrying that. Your glutes, your quads, your hamstrings. These are the biggest muscles we have in our body. The strongest, they have the most capacity. And yet for most people, they're often the weakest, you know, weak glutes, weak quads, weak hammies, because we just don't utilize our legs because of how we hold our pelvis and carry our whole body. Okay, as we move through today's workshop, you'll see how our 5 qualities of movement are all interdependent on each other. And mobile hips is important, sure, but I can only have mobile hips if my leg's doing the right thing, my feet are grounded, and vice versa. Okay, so what I want you to do is start standing. Hold on to your pelvis, feel the bones at the front, feel the bones at the back. I want you to feel, actually we'll go 2 hands at the back for a minute. I want you to feel where your spine comes down and meets your pelvis. Okay, at the back here is our SIJ, sacroiliac joint. The sacrum meeting the ilium and that joint in between. Where that joint sits in space is going to determine whether that force gets transmitted between upper and lower body or blocked and locked in the pelvis. Okay, so what I want you to do is while you're standing here, feet underneath your hip bones, move your pelvis forward and backward. This isn't necessarily about tilting, although some people will naturally already be in a tilt. Okay, so perhaps let's go through posterior and anterior tilt and notice if you have a tendency to be in one or the other. Okay, some people's natural posture is to already be anteriorly tilted or to be tucked right in. So if you find that is you, I want you to try and find the middle and then float forward and backward in space. And stop when you feel like that SI joint is above your heels. Okay, not your midfoot, definitely not the front of your feet, but SI above heels. So that's one joint we need to be really aware of. And like I said, it's the place where we want stability. So if we can picture a diamond, tailbone to the crest of our pelvis, up to our lower back, this diamond We want to have stability and control around. That's only possible when our hip socket moves freely. So now picture that hip socket and the video where we saw the femur slowly articulating around and all the connective tissue layering on. You can start to get a feeling of even these small motions are actually affecting a lot of tissues, a lot of connective tissues. So I'm drawing like a figure 8 shape with my foot. It doesn't really matter what shape, but I'm thinking about circumducting the hip and moving it in circular figure 8 curving patterns with my foot staying close to the ground. So this is the hip mobility we talk about when we say mobile hips and we talk about function. This is what your hips need to functionally be able to do. And you really, I can't drill that home anymore than, I've said it already like 10 times now. This gentle motion is functional hip movement, but it's functional when we're on our feet. Achieving that kind of motion when we're standing and supporting our body weight is the goal. And it can be really hard to achieve because of how many habitual movement habits we have or tensions we might already have. But this is our end goal and what I really want you to get from today. So while you stand on one leg, just have that hunt around of the hip, and the foot can stay low, or we can start to bring the foot up and around wherever you're comfortable. Notice that the standing leg has to move a little to make this happen. Now, my standing foot is going to be really grounded. My standing leg is like this shock absorber. My hips are now accessing the mobility, and I have the freedom to keep my spine loose and my arms loose, which helps me to balance. If you are falling over, or if this is challenging, you will find one of those things or all of those things is not there. So the stability of your foot, you might be wobbling around. The spine and arms might be really rigid. All of these things will contribute. But you can see when they come together, we get fluidity in our motion. It's not from having more range or more strength. It's from having the connection of these qualities. Switch legs. So I'm just starting with that circumduction, figure 8s, circles, exploring that movement, visualizing the thigh bone, the hip socket. Put your hands on your back and try to keep that area quite stable. Stable doesn't mean still. I can weave in space, but I don't want to feel like side bending or arching. Yeah. That's going to come to how I use the standing leg. Now, most of what we see online, what's promoted, if I Google hip mobility, if I Google function of the hip, functional hip movement, it talks about the hip moving in 4 planes of motion: flexion, extension, adduction, and abduction. So then the wrong way around. Abduction and adduction. Okay, 4 planes of movement, forward, back, side to side. Hopefully from what I've shown you already today, you can see that that's not how the hip works. It's not even how the hip socket is designed, and that every movement we do is circular. So forget the 4 planes of motion. Think of that circumductive action. We create the articulation or the awareness, and now we want to do it under load. So under load looks like having our feet planted on the floor and being able to pivot from our hips. All right, this is the part where I said it can look simple, but can actually be really tricky to do and really tricky to do well. Sometimes we think we're doing it, and then when we watch and show you what we see, you'll realize why it's harder to find, even though it looks simple when I do it, can be hard to embody if this is new to you, or if you are fighting against any dysfunctions and joint tightnesses. So I'm going to bend the knees a little. Think about my whole upper body coming along for the ride. So I'm not twisting the waist at all. I'm twisting my hips. And of course, that brings my body around with it. Now, I'm not looking for a large range of motion. I'm looking for my knees and my feet to stay pretty grounded, and my hip to turn. So when I turn to my right leg is loaded, and I've taken that hip into internal rotation. Okay, and then I push in my right leg to bring me across to the left. And I get this fold in my pants. My head, my ribs, and my hips are still stacked above each other, and they're coming from side to side. Okay, common things we see with this when people attempt is that they will push their hip like this, and I'm keeping my belly and my chest facing you rather than work on rotation. So you can see one arm comes forward versus that shift side to side. Okay, so that's one of the things. Or we see the hips going out, the head staying behind, or we see like, you know, all sorts of weird motions. I shouldn't say weird, all sorts of interpretations of it. But I really just want to sink down into the legs, keep the pelvis stable, and think pivoting in hip socket. So my pubic bone, my belly button, my sternum, all turn together. We also don't need more range, as in like getting to here is plenty. Getting to here, I lose it. So if I turn too far, I cannot keep that leg grounded anymore, right? So I want grounded feet, soft knees, and turning appropriately, not to my maximum. Here to here. Now, to do this well, you actually start to find that it has to have a bit of a dip. Okay, all of our movement is curved. None of the motions that we do as humans are straight lines. Okay, even though we like to train straight, rigid lines and all this stuff for good form, we don't work like that. Okay, and we're remapping this with the hips being circumductive. We have to have this circular motion, down and up, down and up. So as I do this practice, I'm speculating, can I make it smoother, more balanced? What if I shift too far? What does that feel like? It's not about getting it right every time. As we'll talk about in a bit, you know, with the learning process, is we have to do something and see how it works, okay? See how it feels. And our attention our attention of ourselves or awareness of ourselves improves as we get feedback for what to look at. Okay, so you might begin and think it's going really good. And then I might say, you know, you're really rock and rolling on your feet. We need to ground your feet more. Stop moving your knees, work from the hips. And then you get the sensation. And when you feel it, then we want to really practice it and make it more complex. So you may have noticed I've just changed to a circle instead of that dipping and ducking. Right, so I've added a bit more over the top. And now I'm circling, for me, counterclockwise. And back. So if there is one movement you want to add into your daily repertoire to work on hip mobility, it would be this. Yeah, it's creating some awareness and articulation and then putting it into action under load. That's as simple as it needs to be. For the beginning, of course, if we want to keep pushing ourselves and creating more and more freedom, then we get more and more complicated, but the principle will always remain the same. Now have a little rest there, and I'll just get you to shake your leg, okay? So you're turning your foot in and out, picturing the femur pivoting in the hip socket left and right as loosely as possible. You want to feel your quads, your butt, all the muscles like shaking on the bone. Switch. Anyone who thinks they have tight hips should be doing this, okay? Not stretching the glutes, stretching the quads, taking the hip back, but shaking the femur in the socket and loosening up all of the deep connective tissue and deeper internal muscles that hold that hip in that locked position. All right. Now, I'm going to go into what I like to call a free-form hip wiggle. This is for the purpose of neural mapping. Your brain has a map of your body based on what you do and don't do with it. Some of you who have a really active physical practice and do a lot of this stuff will have a pretty accurate map. Some of you where movement is not a part of your life, or you just do the same sorts of exercises all the time and have done for like 20 years, you'll have a really outdated map. When we do these free-form explorative movements, I'm going to be moving my hip and just creating and seeing what is already there. I'm doing that so my brain can get a sensation of this area, create new movements, break free from old habits, because we all have them, and try to bring variety back into the system, which as well is really a big part of longevity in our movement practices. Okay, we really need variety in the shapes and types of things we do with our body. So I want you to stand with your feet on the floor. They can change shape by stepping and turning, but we're going to pick a hip bone. So I'm going to start on my right hip bone and feel like that hip bone is driving me around wherever it can without repeating itself in circles, spirals, and looping lines. So I just allow the movement to be guided from the hip without repeating patterns and searching for variety. You might get clicks and cracks and clunks. We want to take care of our knees, and that's going to come down to intelligent placement of our feet, stepping at the right time, and this will all come through practice. Change to the other hip. So now my left hip bone is steering the ship, down, looping. You don't want to try and copy me. You really want to tune into the sensation of your body, feeling like that bone is guiding you through space, and the rest of you is organizing in such a way that allows for that to happen. And have a rest. If you felt a little bit limited in that, like you didn't know where to go, or you were getting stuck in doing the same thing quite early on, it's just another indicator like we don't have that movement variability that we could have. Our body is habitual. We're stuck in certain movement patterns. And until we break free of them, doesn't matter what type of exercise you do, you take that movement pattern and you do it in your Pilates class. You take that movement pattern, you do it when you go to the gym. You do it when you run, because you're doing it all day long, right? Our goal is to upgrade what you do all day long, so that regardless of what type of exercise you choose to engage in, you do it better, you do it and get more out of it, and your body is more functional. So we're going to do one little task that's a little bit more challenging. This is going to be about getting down towards the ground. And as you'll learn with us, like, yes, we're focusing on the hips, but of course, it's always a full body exercise. How I use my feet, how I use my legs, the movement that I do, all of that allows me to use my hips well, which allows me to be free in my spine and loose in my arms. The qualities always come together. One of the main things that we know the pelvis is for that carrying the upper body, being supported by the legs. So we want our legs to be strong. So every time throughout your day that you're picking stuff up off the floor, loading the dishwasher, just doing your day-to-day stuff, your legs are organizing in such a way that they're already strong and your hips are being taken care of. We're not creating injury through living. So we're going to play with reaching for the floor, but just feeling like my arms are just dangling. Yeah, I'm not taking them downward. I'm just like dangling them and seeing if I can touch or get close and taking my legs into different shapes. Wide, narrow, both hands, one hand, taking the legs through as many different positions as I can. Now, if you have joints that you feel like you need to take care of or are learning how to use at the moment, do this slowly. Step, place, and squat. Try something different. Keep picturing that femur pivoting into the hip socket. I don't mind if your squats are 2 inches deep. If you're getting variety and rotation, that's going to be beneficial. The last quality I'll add to this is feeling like a trampoline. So when I come down, there's like a spring back up. Yeah, I'm not coming down and getting stuck and having to unfold or really push my way out. It's like boing, boing, visit and bounce back up. Finish with a shake, keeping the hips level, just getting that thigh to move again, side to side. All right, going to come back in now. All right, so that's like a physical example of learning your anatomy in motion and working on movement patterns rather than stretching and strengthening to create function. Now, I said I'd give you a sample of what I meant by that. One of the really common behavioral postural things people deal with is tight hip flexors, tight lumbar spine, weak hamstrings, okay? And visually, it represents like a posture of someone that kind of stands with their butt stuck out a little bit, and this big curve in their low back. Now, a stretching and strengthening approach would be to stretch out the hip flexors. So I do quad stretches, I hold here and I stretch out that band at the front. I stretch out the lumbar by doing things like Jefferson curls or child's pose. And then I strengthen the hamstring with glute bridge, hamstring curls or deadlifts. So that's the stretching and strengthening approach to rebalancing posture. And what you'll find is that person that stands like that goes about, does their stretches constantly. They get a little bit of symptom relief. Like when they do it, it feels good. And for a day or two, maybe a few hours, or if you're lucky, a day or two, they move better because of the stretching. Over time, they give it 6 months or 12 months, they really build the strength and they're kind of still in the same spot, a little bit better, but they still have that problem. They go to the physio and the physio reconfirms, yeah, just got tight hip flexors, just got weak hamstrings, just got to make that stronger. But they're stuck in this cycle. And some people are stuck in that rehab cycle for 5, 10 years, working on the same stuff. When do you stop to ask, why did that occur in the first place? And if I could just learn to shift my pelvis back and drop into my legs, those muscles will get the proper load on them. They'll stretch on their own just through how I stand. It does sound simple, and some of you will think like, yeah, but if they're tight, I can't stand like that. But you can. Okay, I haven't had anyone that has not been able to shift their bones to some degree and create new loads on all these muscles just in the moment. But the goal is, how do we make that more subconscious and our new normal, like our new default way of acting, so it's not something we have to think about all the time. That's the hard part. And that is what Glenn and I have bitten off and what we try and do with our work, because the spot treating symptom relief works in the moment, feels good in the session, and it means that you can feel like you've done your work because you showed up to the gym and you did all those things, but then you walk out moving how you've always moved, same problem comes back. Okay, so we don't do as much like that in the session, but we change how you move in the rest of your day. All of a sudden, those problems don't come back anymore. And year upon year, your physicality changes because you're working on this, what we call coordinative harmony. So we're going to jump into that coordinative harmony right now. And the best way I can explain it is with your hand. Your hand moves as one amazing tool. It can be strong, it can be soft, it can be articulate, I can open things, I can be intricate, and I don't have to think about what joint am I using or what muscle am I activating. I just use my hand. I have never gone and tried to work the range of motion of my knuckles. Can see it's really hard to do. I've never worked the isolation of any muscle. I've never had to stretch my hand, but I do a variety of tasks with it all day, every day, as most of us do, and our hands are functional. But our bodies, we need to treat the same and get away from this isolated view, okay? I want my body to be able to move as smoothly and easily as my hand. So whether I'm throwing a ball, picking something up off the ground, carrying my kids, picking up groceries, yes, doing deadlifts, like whatever it is I want to do, monkey barring, gardening, lying down, rolling. I just want my body to work as one. I don't want to have to think about like hand here, leg here, stretch this, and getting ourselves into these positions through isolated approaches. So when we work on these 5 qualities instead, let me bring them up onto the screen for you. So these 5 qualities that we work on are grounding our feet, having bouncy legs, mobile hips, loose arms, and a fluid spine. And when these qualities come together, we have coordinative harmony so that we're not hurting our joints just through moving. Now, the learning cycle of how we learn anything is we have an experience of something, we observe how it went, we speculate or hypothesize about it, about why that happened or what that could be, and then we experiment and try again. And we stay in that circular loop, slowly getting better and making your own decisions, understanding where we went wrong, being able to problem solve and adapt in the moment, which is, like resiliency and critical thinking and all of these things. But it has to be in this feedback loop. So when we're doing this work, you might feel your knees. You've done some of that bouncy leg work and your knees were sore. So you observe that, hey, when I move this way, my knees get really pissed off. And we speculate, why is that? Are my knees already sore? They're sore all the time anyway? Or is this a new thing? Is it because of where I was placing my feet? Was I going down too low? Was I just doing too much too soon? We speculate on what our own situation is and we experiment and try again. This cycle, done consciously and intentionally over time, especially when you have that professional feedback in the loop, is gold for bringing these qualities into your body. If you tried this and your knees hurt and you just went, oh no, that approach doesn't work for me, my knees hurt, I'll try something else. That's where we have no chance of learning, or no chance of changing our future trajectory when it comes to our physical wellness. So not being scared of pain, being willing to understand it, being willing to work with it, but all of that takes being willing to do something different. Okay, you can't just keep moving the way you've always moved and expect your joints to get better. They won't. We have to begin to move differently. Now, I like this movement pyramid that we've created. Imagine, like it's obviously based on the food pyramid. Imagine if you ate Macca's regularly, drank Coca-Cola regularly, skipped meals, consumed alcohol all the time, but then you were like, oh, I just need to get the best quality magnesium supplement and like find that like top-notch fish oil. And if I get those supplements, like I know I'll be healthier. Obviously, anyone that's done anything like health related will know that that is not going to work. Okay. The foundation of our diet is far more important than the supplementation. It's the same with our movement. So the foundation of what you do all day, every day, how you do everything, walking, standing, gesturing, cleaning, commuting, relaxing, the variety of motions you go through just by living, how you've been moving through this workshop so far, that is going to be more influential to your physical longevity, physical performance, physical capacity than what you go and do at the gym. Just going to let that sink in for a bit because everyone starts at the top of the pyramid. Go to the gym, do training, do skill-specific stuff, never address the bottom of the pyramid. And you are missing the biggest opportunity and just like putting in all this effort for very little reward and getting burnt out, frustrated, and feeling like nothing works. So, this is what we refer to as the groundwork of your movement habits. When you get an upgrade in your awareness of self, everything changes. Yeah. And, this is again what Glenn and I have been working on. We realize that this is the biggest missing part. We've done the training, the gym and skill specific stuff a lot. And it's when we changed this other stuff that we really excelled and got long-term physical freedom and found the same for our clients. So then the question is, how do we do that? Like this stuff at the bottom is super habitual. How do we change things that we have been doing for 20, 30, 40 years? So for us, what we found is you have to improve awareness by slowing down our movement. People talk about building this mind-body connection. We all have a mind-body connection. Our mind is inside our body. We cannot separate the two. All we need to do is slow down and remove the noise so we can actually listen. Going to the gym with headphones in, watching screens, texting during your workout, multitasking all the time, and doing things on repeat, doing things habitually is not going to get you there. So we really slow things down. And for some, that can be really uncomfortable, to stand still, to move slowly and intentionally for 20, 30 minutes. It can take a lot of effort, especially if you're someone whose day-to-day is quite fast-paced and you're constantly task jumping and you're not used to meditation and things like this. It can be a lot to slow down, but this is a really pivotal part of feeling our movement and being able to change it. Then we clean up regularly with kinetic hygiene practices. We don't just exercise for the workout, we move regularly to clean up the mess. Now, I love the analogy of looking after our home or cleaning up at home. Each day there will be things you do as habits, such as like wiping down the kitchen bench after you cook, doing your dishes, wiping down around the basin once you brush your teeth, you brush your hair, you put on clean clothes, you put the washing on. There's kind of like this day-to-day run of your house that you do just to keep on top of things. Now, if you don't do that for a day, it's not the end of the world. Just got a bit more work to do tomorrow. If you don't do it for a week, you've got a lot more work to do by the weekends. And if you've never really cleaned up, then where do you begin? So this is the same with our movement habits. We have to begin with practices that can begin to clean up the mess and get ourselves to the point that we don't have these big build-ups and time in between. And then the third and most important step, which is the long-term part, is creating coordinative harmony. So there's actually less mess anyway. So when we're in these habits of like, as I cook, I'm already cleaning. My dishes are halfway done by the time I finish the cook. There's just kind of cycles that we all have of keeping on top of stuff. But if I'm moving in such a way that I'm building up all this mess in my body through how I sit at work, lounge at home, go to the gym with poor movement habits, or wear high heels, carry my bag on one side, don't move my hips well, whatever it is, we're building up a lot of mess. So there's constantly things to work on. But when we get this coordinative harmony, there's less and less stuff to clean up. And we get to the point where the way I move day to day isn't causing mess anymore. And I actually feel pretty good. And now when I want to exercise, I can do what I want. And I do it because it's fun, for community connection. I'm not doing it to heal and to restore, because that stuff is really tiring, but it is necessary at different parts of our life. So that is our approach. This is what we teach at Aspen. We teach you about feeling naturally strong, capable, and having this confidence and autonomy in your body, no matter your age, no matter your starting point. We walk alongside people as their guide to show them what they cannot see themselves. Okay, we get tunnel vision, we see what we want, we feel things, and we don't know what we don't know. And when our coach comes along beside us and is like, hey, look what your foot's doing, or what about this area of life, or, you know, we shine the lights on the things that we've had our blinkers on for, and we get out of that focus on the pain, because where the pain is rarely where the problem is. The pain is that symptom of the big environment and the way we move our body. So feedback is incredibly important in this process. What we've found is people try to learn these movements, so they think they're doing it right, but actually they're just doing it the way they've always done it. And they always want their next piece. You know, our ego always wants us to feel like we're progressing, wanting to do more, wanting to do harder or faster. But we need to get those deep mechanics right first, or else, again, we fall into that same cycle. So our feedback, or anyone's visual feedback, is super important. And one of the big parts of the way Glenn and I work is that we really want you to be able to see what we're seeing, so that you become autonomous in this. So that if you work with us for 4 months or 6 months or 12 months, however long it is, when you leave, you know how to take care of yourself and you're not dependent on us. You leave with this knowledge and this toolbox of how to care for your body, how to move, freedom, strength, power, and not, oh shit, now that gym is closed, I don't know what to do anymore. Or now my coach has gone, I don't know what to do anymore. Well, you don't become dependent on us. We just keep leveling you up to become more dependent on yourself. So we opened a gym in Perth in 2018, and we ran it for 5 years. We decided to close it 2 years ago because we're having our second baby and we were feeling really stretched with energy and time. We really wanted to be there for our kids in this period that we knew we couldn't get back. We knew we could rebuild a business, but we knew we wouldn't get their childhood back, and we really wanted to be present and be there for it. So we made a really hard decision to close the doors to our gym, which was so bittersweet because we loved the community that we had built, the team and everything we had going there. But we decided to close the doors to focus on family. And in that time, we created our groundwork program. So first we took a bit of space and we really just nestled into the family unit, but we thought about all the things that went really well at the gym, all the people that got amazing life-changing transformations, and then the people that maybe didn't, that kept coming, but like nothing really shifted for them. And we got really, we had a lot of inquiry as to why was this? And this is what went into our groundwork program. We tried to cover it from a point of, if everybody could do this process, how much better off they would have been. We've put it into a 4-month course where we work on awareness and understanding your self-orientation, understanding these 5 pivotal movement qualities and coordinative harmony, and how to integrate this into your current life. If anybody is interested, we do have a special offer from attending this workshop. So the offer is that you'll get $500 off our coaching package, as well as a bonus month in the program. So we usually do it for 4 months as a minimum, but you would get 5 months as your minimum and $500 off if you sign up in June. So to find out more about that, all you need to do is book a strategy call. That's a one-on-one call with Glenn or myself, where we'll walk you through our process and learn a bit more about your background, your current situation, and we can see if our program could be a fit for you. The call is completely complimentary, obligation-free. If you decide it's a fit, the offer that I presented before will be available to the end of June. Reach out if you have any questions. I hope you found today's workshop helpful, and good luck in your movement journey.